one of our haters who are out there watching.
I want to warn people about hypnoporn.
I need to stay meta.
Stop that.
Need new tires? Like, what?
If Jim would shut up for a second.
Oh, high fidelity.
Okay, don't tell me to shut up.
I'm not whining.
I eat doggies. I eat doggies. Feels like a party.
Stop that.
It's a war. They have made it so that I cannot be celebrating July 4th.
I don't care. I'm gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend. I don't care. How do I think? That's what I think. I don't care.
We're going to have to be smart. We're going to have to be strategic. We're going to have to be aggressive.
I'm an alpha guy.
I'll flip a table every time you aren't getting by.
Let's go. Just push.
It's all psychological warfare.
I'm not part of QAnon.
We know what they are doing.
For Trump.
If shit goes wrong, like, I will literally have to leave the country. Stop that. I'll land my initial plane.
Okay, hi-fi. This isn't the hi-fi show.
Good night. Nighty-night.
This is 6 Degrees of Stew. You don't need to stay meta, but I'm glad you're here.
Hi, this is Shelby, and I run the Into This Universe account on Twitter, and this is 6 Degrees of Stew. I'm going to start off telling you a little bit about myself. First of all, this is my office, where I don't run active measures. Definitely don't get paid in crypto or PayPal. Not paid by Mike Flynn, not paid by the Russians, not paid by anyone. This used to be our son's bedroom. Hope I would have removed this lovely faux wood paneling, super fancy, but unfortunately I'm not paid in crypto or paid by PayPal or any of those people, so stuck with this lovely paneling, and alas, I'm just a empty nesting mom now. Been married for 25 years. I've been with my husband for 29. We met in college, and we have 2 wonderful sons. One is a librarian. He's doing some great work there. Our other son is going to UNC at Chapel Hill. He's getting his master's degree and PhD there. Some stuff about me. I have my master's in criminology. The first job I had out of college was working with victims of sexual abuse, teenagers and children, and those who also perpetrated the abuse. I did that for a year. That was mentally taxing. Then a job opening came about with a company that's well respected in our area, and I became a therapeutic staff support. That is where you work with a child or teenager individually, one-on-one, either in the school or community. I worked within a school system with a child who had autism, first grader. He was amazing, family was, his mom, and we did some community activities as well. Worked with him for about almost a whole school year. And within that same company, a position came open where I could work at their partial treatment program. So I moved up within the organization to that. The partial treatment program is, you have residential treatment programs, then you have the partial treatment program, and then you have schools. So the partial treatment program is either for children and teens coming out of a residential treatment program, then they go to the partial treatment program, and then they can return to their school, or they're in their school and they go to the partial treatment program in hopes of preventing them from going to a residential treatment program. So the partial treatment program, we offered them mental health services, and they also could go to school. So it wasn't split up like 4 hours and 4 hours. They would have mental health service treatment and then some schooling, and it bounced back and forth, and worked with psychiatrists. We had treatment plans for them, and we worked with the parents. It was very rewarding work. Really enjoyed it. I did that for a couple of years. And I went and worked for Catholic Charities. I did refugee assistance, helping them resettle, in the United States. We did helping unhoused persons, whether they needed a place to stay for the night or maybe more permanent residence. We helped with utilities for people. Maybe, their electricity or water was getting ready to get shut off, and help them come up with a plan or even offer some assistance to get that caught up. We had a Christmas program where we would help families and children in need. We did counseling, family, children, individual counseling, adoptions. If somebody was going to adopt a child, they could come to us and we would do the casework to help them proceed along in the adoption. I worked in a Catholic school. They didn't have a guidance counselor, so I kind of filled that role. I also ran programs there. Anything you could think of for a service, we had it there. And I was diagnosed with lupus and started getting really sick and some surgeries, and they were quite accommodating at Catholic Charities, but I just couldn't balance being sick and trying to make up the hours. So my husband and I, we made the decision together that it would just be better for me to stay home for my health. And so that's what I did. That's kind of our life in a nutshell. So it's kind of ridiculous to say active measures or getting paid for a space, $500, whatever. Just a normal family, regular person. But anyways, moving along. So there have been commentaries and, things that people have tweeted, or there's the Thursday space that Stephen Cuevas and Taylor Jennings host that I am part of, and I've done some pieces on, and other people have as well. And people have covered Jim over the years. Why not ignore him? Why give him oxygen? Things of that nature. Shouldn't you just, let it all go? My answer to that is absolutely not. For several reasons. Jim has over 100,000 followers. He is on various forms of social media outside of Twitter. He has a podcast. He has been on other shows and interviewed. By his count, he has written millions of words, thousands of articles. He calls himself a journalist. You'll see that on his Twitter profile. He has his own Substack. So he has a body of work that should be criticized, should be examined, he should be open to critiques of his work. That's just the way it works, especially if he's calling himself a journalist. I mean, that's just fair game in, the field that he is working in, and I saw Heidi Kuda, his co-host, was commenting on his reporting today. So, that's just the nature of what Jim does. So, that's one of the things. Another thing I would point out is his failed doxing. There are people that don't know that their faces are out there, that he's associating with other accounts on Twitter. That is harmful. That could bleed over into real life. His followers are liking this. They are retweeting these, and they believe Jim. A lot of people do. And it's not true. I know these people, the people that he's portraying as these failed doxes, and they're lies. And he continuously has been doing this for years. It's dangerous for the people that he's failed doxing. It's dangerous for the people whose faces he's attaching to this. They don't deserve it on either side. He has participated in real doxing. And I think we've all seen that with people coming to others' houses, swatting incidents that have happened. It can get really, really ugly. Jim attacks reputable journalists, activists, anti-fascist researchers, extremist researchers, while he sits comfortably on his couch behind a screen. These people are on the ground. These people are digging into real research. These people are fact-checking. This is their career. He can't take a bit of criticism, but he will lob it. He will lob lies. He will lob vitriol. And I think that needs to be called out. A lot of people have been trying, but it goes largely ignored, and he gets legitimized by the propping up of people around him, his co-host, people who don't do their due diligence, who have good reputations and go on. Radicalized truth survives. We live in a digital age. It takes less than 5 minutes to do a quick Google search. Go down through somebody's Twitter feed and find out what they believe, what's out there. You can search hashtag StewAnon, hashtag Jim Stewartson, any of the co-host names, people that they associate with. Go on Into the Stewniverse, my highlights, you will see a lot. The information's out there. We've been trying. A lot of us have. Not just me. A lot of people have. It's out there. Really disheartening when you see some really good journalists, people who are making documentaries and things of that nature, either retweet them or go on Radicalized Truth Survives, because that just legitimizes their work and their actions and things that they have said. Another reason I don't think he should be ignored are some of the ways that he uses people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community, and marginalized groups as a shield to promote his advocacy, while at the same time he will post the most disgusting homophobic remarks and vitriol and racist tweets that everybody just brushes by and doesn't pay attention to. And those are on my Stewniverse highlights. You can see those as well. I use all of his own words and his tweets, self-act based. That's another reason I think he shouldn't be ignored. There are many, and I will go into that further, but he is not the center of the show. I just thought I should explain why he shouldn't and can't be ignored. There are reasons for this. Those are just a few that I wanted to bring up. Moving along. Start off with, we're going to do Dr. Stephen Hassan. And the episodes are going to progress starting with Sun Myung Moon. We're going to start with it. He started the Moonies. We're going to talk about the organization, which is very in-depth. I did a lot of research, read a lot of reports. Then we're going to move into Dr. Stephen Hassan's time in the Moonies, and compare and contrast it with other people who were also in the Moonies, and some other things, topics and stuff that are involved in that. And last part will be when Dr. Stephen got out of the Moonies, what did he do with his time? What kind of things was he up to? And we'll move into present day and talk about those activities as well. There is no official history of the Unification Church. Most information on Sun Myung Moon's origin story comes from a biased autobiography and his followers. It is said that Moon is the fifth of 8 children. He was born on January 6th of 1920 in a rural town in what is now North Korea. Moon's family converted to Presbyterianism when Moon was just 10 years old, and it is said as a young man that he taught in Sunday school. When he was 12 years old, he began praying for extraordinary things and says he must have caught God's attention. Quote from Moon: "From childhood, I was clairvoyant," he once told a group of followers. "I could see through people, see their spirits." At the age of 16, around Easter of 1936, Jesus Christ appeared to him in a vision on a mountainside.
This gentleman is Mr. Sun Myung Moon, who is traveling around the world calling for the establishment of one world religion and one church. Seated next to him is his interpreter, David Kim. Mr. Moon speaks only Korean. Now, Mr. Kim, will you explain to Mr. Moon that if I take a merry, lighthearted approach to him, it's not out of disrespect, it's because in civilian life I'm a part-time humorist. Mr. Moon, according to your remarkable biography, at the age of 16, on Easter Sunday, you had a conversation with Jesus.
Yes, he did through the revelation in vision.
Well, now, you weren't with him, Mr. Kim, at the time.
No, I was not there. In Korean, they conversed each other. That means spirit world. When you spiritually contact or in spirit world, we carry the conversation with mind to mind, heart to heart.
Yes. Mr. Moon, we all of us have read and heard many accounts of the appearance of Jesus. You are the only man I have ever met who actually met him. Would you describe him to us? Was Jesus a black man? Was he a brown man? Was he a white? What sort of man?
예수가 나타나는데 어떤 형태로 나타나느냐면 he appears just like a form of Jewish people style.
Yes. He looked Jewish. He looked kind of Jewish, did he?
White. Looked like white.
Yes. I see. Now, was he? How old was he when Mr. Moon met him? He was some 44 years old. Was
33 years of age.
He was 33 years of age. Did he look like the pictures of him? Did he wear a beard?
시험이 많이 났네요. Yes, he had a beard.
He wore a beard. And what sort of clothing?
어떤 옷을 입었느냐? A long robe of Jewish people.
I see. Now, did you ask when you know, if a guy comes up to me and says, "Well, I am Napoleon," or "I am Bobby Sherman," or any other incredible creature, I ask him for some credentials. Did Mr. Moon know that this was Jesus? Did he ask for any credentials? What convinced him?
He has the panoramic view of vision from the childhood up to 34 years of age, up to 3 years of age. So there is no need credential for him. Through his spiritual vision, he will be identified right there. He's the one.
Mr. Moon was born with the ability to recognize Jesus when he appeared.
Yeah, he has.
There was no question at all.
He revealed to him that God had chosen him to establish his kingdom of heaven on earth. It is said that Moon wandered the spirit world. Over the next 9 years, Moon received revelations through prayer, meditation, the study of scriptures, and spiritual communication with Jesus, Moses, Buddha, and even God himself. During this next 9 years, according to Moon's biographers, he developed what was to become the Divine Principles. This was the book that sets down the church's theology. Moon started out as the head of a fringe Christian sect known for engaging in strange sexual rituals. Pak Chung-hwa, a former church leader and confidant of Moon, detailed the early years of the sect in his 1993 book, The Tragedy of the Six Marys, which was first published in Japan. In the work, Pak talks about how Moon used his doctrine of purifying the blood of the original sin to force female followers to have sex with him.
Interviews with the early members responsible for the publishing of the book, The Tragedy of the Six Marys. Sun Moon, the founder of the Unification Church, has risen to become one of the most prominent and wealthiest religious leaders in the world. Moon has proclaimed himself the Messiah and Lord of the Second Advent. He is well known for officiating at mass weddings. He and his wife are known as the true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. The Divine Principle explains the fall as based on an illicit sexual relationship between Eve and Lucifer. Eve in turn seduced Adam. This introduced the elements of original sin into our first ancestors. Moon claims to have the authority to cleanse the original sin and purify the satanic blood. Since 1962, this grace has been effected through the holy wine ceremony. Followers are to adhere to an absolute standard of purity in sex and fidelity in marriage to restore the divine ideal. In the early days, Reverend Moon, however, followed the ritual of Pikarum. 1954. Is this the action of God's Son? News article, there are lots of women used as playthings. Founder arrested. Iwa Women's University. Police came to investigate the group due to allegations of pikurum, ritual sex. Tragedy of the Six Marys being printed. After 38 years of silence, one of the earliest members speaks out about the real meaning of restoration. Chang Hua Pak, UC founding member, restoration is through sex, and you don't have to do it just once, but 3 times. Seoul, Cha Pa Dong Unification Church headquarters. Former core member confirms that sex was practiced to purify the impure lineage and return to God's original ideal. Unification Church founder Reverend Sun Myung Moon. What do mass wedding participants think of the concept of change, blood lineage? Interviewee 1. The main teaching of the church, to my understanding, was always focusing on blood lineage, so I was always thinking of quitting because I didn't get it. Interviewee 2. I would have felt uncomfortable if restoration meant having sex with the Messiah. God created Adam and Eve. Their relationship is positive and negative. And God descends there vertically. The relationship between God and humanity is vertical, and the relationship between Adam and Eve is horizontal. This relationship is the same between spiritual and physical. Originally, restoration or change of blood lineage was done through sex. Later, it was redesigned in the mass wedding, the ritual ceremony of restoration, mass wedding. Interview, Wong Ha Tak. I could believe that the Unification Church was a sex cult because I have studied the teaching. I was surprised to learn that it actually happened even in the early days of the church. Religion has to have a basis in reason and ethics. Without them, it is not a true religion. Moa Hong Tak, head of International Religious Studies Center. He was attacked by a Korean member of the Dawn World sect and died at age 55. East Seoul Remand Center. This man left the Unification Church. He wrote 19 of the Unification Church's holy songs during his time following Moon. Now he works as a police pastor, offering music and prayers to prisoners as a way of making up for his time in the Unification Church. He performed a lot of sex acts in the name of restoration. Police pastor Doi Jin Kim. I came to understand that it was a sin. Sex equals nice job? I realized that doing sex was a nice job? Hoi Min Yu talked reluctantly. Former president of the UC-owned shotgun company, Hoi Min Yu. Mr. Yu works informally as a counselor to help people exiting the church. When I was in the church, we believed we were building the kingdom of heaven on earth, but in reality, Reverend Moon's claim was a failure. Although I have close families that are in the UOC, I came to this place abandoning those families, but I will never forget about them. Shin Hee-Yu's sister had restorational sex directly with Reverend Moon. Shin Hee-Yu, I wanted to receive restoration when I entered Reverend Moon's personal bedroom. I was asked, do you have qualification? I said, yes, I do. He said you have to receive restoration 3 times through the stages of formation, growth, and completion. I went home after finishing formation stage. Outside of the room, there were older members sleeping. So in that way, I received restoration. She then went on to explain this. I went for lectures at the church too often, so much so that we ran out of food at home. Reluctantly, I decided to put my 5 children in an orphanage. I didn't have an income because I gave up work to help at the church. Ashin Orphanage. Presenter, I heard that some early members of the Unification Church put their children here in the South Seoul Orphanage. Orphanage director. After the telephone call, I researched and found where there was one that left the orphanage in 1968. But we don't have any previous records now. Several tens of children were here at its peak, though. What kind of life do they have after being abandoned here for their childhood because of their parents' belief? I went to see Shihin's son. Presenter, I have records saying that lots of children were put in the orphanage during the early days of the Unification Church. Is that true? Yoi Gil Gap. I don't know if the Unification Church was responsible for sending us to the orphanage or not. Our father left us. We were put in the orphanage because our mother didn't have enough food. When I went to the orphanage, I was 6 years old and the second son. My youngest sister was 3. I have resentment in my heart. I can't do anything against that enormous organization. I have no choice but to give up and live my life. Sun Myung Moon, founder of the Unification Church, equals the Second Coming. These people had a dream and were expectant of the returning Messiah. It seems they lost that dream and their families, but what were they really looking for? Which beliefs or practices in the early UC caused these human tragedies? Chung Hua Pak, founding member of the UC. All things, including money, originally belonged to God. You can steal your husband's money to donate to God. It is against society's law, but not against God's law. That's okay. I was told many times that money should be raised and donated in this way. Everything has to be returned to God, so it's okay. Mr. Wu is traveling, visiting some old church friends. The person he is visiting today is a woman that used to work in the kitchen during the earliest days of the church. The person he knew back then was a cheerful and popular 20-year-old. Now she is in her 60s. Yu, how long have you been operating this roadside bar? Yi Kin Jo, I'm not doing it because I like it. Yu, we used to believe we would go to heaven if we believed and followed. Yi Kin Jo, don't not talk about God's words. Yu, if you have hardships, does anybody help you? Yi Kin Jo, let's not talk about this anymore. The daughters of farmers donated their farms and farmhouses to the church. Sister Yi Kin Jo, Kim Yoon Lee. People that wanted to leave the church didn't have the money or the strength to do so. These are not simply isolated stories. They are representative of similar experiences that many followers of Reverend Moon went through. To gain more understanding of Moon's ideas and where they came from, see The Change of Blood Lineage Through Ritual Sex in the UC Church by Christy L. Nevelin, 2011, and In the Shadow of the Moons by Nan Suk Hong, 1998. The idea of original sin, which holds that humans are born into a state of sinfulness as a result of the fall of Adam and Eve, is a tenet of many Christian faiths. However, Moon's interpretation of Adam and Eve being cast out of the Garden of Eden diverges from the standard Old Testament story, which has the couple eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. In his view, original sin is linked to Eve having sex with Lucifer, who appeared to her as a serpent, an act that corrupted her blood and subsequently, through sexual intercourse, that of Adam too. Moon preached that a Messiah would be sent who would establish a sin-free line by purifying the blood of the 6 Marys, meaning married women. To fulfill the prophecy, the Messiah would need to have sexual intercourse with the women, a total of 3 times each. Presenting himself as the Messiah, Moon used his doctrine to cajole female followers to sleep with him and later bilk them of their money and assets.
I really feel that this issue about the 6 Marys is at the core. It's interesting because we were already preparing a lecture on the 6 Marys. When was this? In 2010, I believe, or 11. We had already given lectures on the 6 Marys. And we have tried to get the information on the 6 Marys, and it's disappeared. Oh, whoops, I don't have it on our computer anymore. Whoops, we don't have it on the computer. So we had to get it from somebody who was in those lectures who took notes on the Six Marys lecture. Because guess what, folks? Even though it's more comfortable to hide it under the rug and be fraudulent about the whole situation and try to just convince people of their own current times, it's easier to do that. It's easier to do what the church, what Mother is doing. Hide it. Don't talk about it. Don't bring it up. It's going to cause problems. So easy to do that. That's a temptation. But guess what? Just like the Mormons, 200 years later, 200 years later, are dealing with the issue around their founder. They're still dealing with it. You understand, folks? It never goes away. It will never go away. For him to come and take all the women of this world and be their spouse. And to have children from every single one of those people. And kill off Satan's blood lineage. I don't care if that makes you feel uncomfortable. I don't care if that makes you feel unnerved. That's the quickest way to do it. He says in public, he says, this only contains 80% of my autobiography. Right? Some of the Japanese sisters maybe have heard that. And then he goes on to call up the four great saints' wives. You know, Mrs. Jesus and Mrs. Buddha and Mrs. Who is it? Mohammed and Mrs. Confucius. So he says this only has 80% of my life story, and then he calls up those ladies. See, what you don't realize about who those ladies are, they're part of the Six Marys. You see, if you don't understand the bride of Christ, the brides of Christ, and you don't understand the 3-day ceremony, you have no way to explain why Father had to walk that course of having those relationships. What is your explanation? What is it? The only way you can explain this is to say that, well, I guess Father was weak in the flesh. But then if you say that, you're saying God is weak in the flesh. What is it? How do you explain the Six Marys? How do you explain those relationships beyond the Six Marys? How do you do it? And still believe in Father. You can't. You cannot. And I've seen it because as the children, we've seen it. I remember one time in Washington, D.C., they were having an argument. And Mother brought this issue out. And she condemned Father for it. If I didn't save you from that, you would have had children from many, many different bellies, is what she said to him.
Even the Unification Church central tenet that the fall was caused not by Eve's eating a forbidden fruit, but by Eve's having sexual intercourse with Satan, is not an idea that originated with Reverend Moon. He was taught that theory in 1945, where he studied for 6 months with a visionary named Bak Moon Kim at the Israel Monastery in Seoul. Kim taught that the garden could be restored only through blood purification. Eve's sin, the theory holds, had been transmitted to a new generation through Satan's bloodline. It was part of Jesus' mission to purify man's bloodlines by marrying and producing sinless children. He was killed before he could do what God intended. As a result, Jesus' death brought spiritual but not physical salvation to the world. As individuals, we all have an active role to play in this restoration drama. Before the Messiah can fully establish heaven on earth, mankind must make amends for the sins of the past. In unificationist terms, they must pay indemnity to compensate God for humanity's past failures. The Unification Church's strict rules of behavior, no smoking, no drinking, no gambling, no sex outside marriage, are designed to help individuals in that task. The Reverend Moon's own life is said to be a model of willing sacrifice and patient suffering. According to church historians, members are to have sexual intercourse with a Masonic leader in a purification rite. The Reverend Moon has always denied these reports, claiming that they were efforts by mainstream religious leaders to discredit the Unification Church. In the early days of the Unification Church,
Members met at a small house with 2 rooms. It was known as the House of 3 Doors. It is rumored that at the first door, one was made to take off one's jacket. At the second door, one's outer clothing. And at the third door, one's undergarments, in preparation for sex. There was an apocalyptic story of a woman who went to church wearing no fewer than 7 layers of clothing, hoping to thwart any attempts to undress her. In a speech in 1987, Mrs. Yu traced the origins of these stories back to the Holy Lord Church of Kim Seongdu. Because they prayed so devoutly, Mrs. Yu said, many people in the group perceived that they were being restored to the position of Adam and Eve before the fall. Therefore, they felt totally purified with no sin. They said, we are like Adam and Eve, who were naked and unashamed. So one time, out of great joy, they took off all their clothes and danced naked. This event spread all over Korea, and despite its very remote relationship to the Unification Church, it became one cause for persecution of our church from other Christians. The record of these early days became all the more confused in 1993 when Chung Hwa Pak, the disciple whom the Reverend Moon is reputed to have carried on his back to South Korea in 1951, that didn't happen, published a book entitled The Tragedy of the Six Marys. In it, Pak stated that the Reverend Moon did practice the sexual rites and contends that Reverend Moon's first wife left him because of his sexual activities with other women. The Reverend Moon is said by Pak to have impregnated a university student, Ms. Kim, in 1953 when he was still married. Because adultery was a criminal offense in Korea, the Reverend Moon sent his lover to Japan to give birth. A son, Hee Jin, was born in 1954 and was acknowledged to be the son of Reverend Moon. The boy would die in a train accident 13 years later. Chung Hwa Pak was persuaded by the Reverend Moon to rejoin the church after publishing his memoir. He disavowed his account of the early days of the Unification Church. It is said that Moon went to Japan to study electrical engineering in 1941. 2 years later, he returned to Korea and married Sun Choi, who bore him a son. In 1946, leaving them behind, he moved to Pyongyang to found a church, a predecessor to the Unification Church. Because of his preaching, Moon said he was imprisoned by communist authorities, tortured, and sent to a labor camp in 1948. He said he was freed in 1950 during the Korean War by United Nations soldiers. He was said to have walked 320 miles to Busan on the southern tip of the Korean peninsula. With 2 disciples, he went to Busan in South Korea, working on the docks and preaching. In 1954, self-ordained, he founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity. He built his church with U.S. Army ration box and lived on the mountainside in a shack. Moon divorced Ms. Choi in 1952, and the following year he moved to Seoul. Within a year, about 30 church centers had sprung up, and before the decade was out, he published The Divine Principle. He sent his first church emissaries to Japan, the source of early growth, and the United States, and began building his Korean business empire. As his church grew, Moon ran afoul of civil and religious authorities. He was excommunicated by his own Presbyterian church and arrested various times by the police for anti-communist activities, according to Moon, on moral charges according to his Korean critics, involving purification rites. The central pillar of Moon's theology held that Eve had a dalliance with Satan in the Garden of Eden and then slept with Adam, which is how human beings were burdened with original sin. Moon also believes that people, movements, and even entire countries embodied these biblical figures. He himself was the perfect Adam, and his mission was to help humankind reclaim its original goodness by forging a new world order led by Korea, the Adam nation. America, the Archangel nation, would play a key role in the mission by helping Korea to root out communism, after which it would bow down to the Korea-led regime with Moon as its king and messiah. Moon is the perfect Adam, so he must be obeyed without question. Jesus, the most important Adam between the original one and Moon, attained spiritual perfection, but was a flawed messiah. His mission was foredoomed by John the Baptist, who spent his time baptizing people instead of becoming Jesus' Jesus' obedient disciple, for influencing the politics of the Herod regime. Making things worse, Jesus was a child of adultery, not an immaculate conception. We were all wrong. According to Moon, Mary was impregnated by Zachariah. Jesus had an unhappy home life because Joseph was jealous of Zachariah and resented Jesus. So there you have it, folks. Moon also taught that he was not only a prophet, but he was anointed by God, the divine guide who would unite the world's religion under his leadership and usher in a kingdom of heaven on earth. People calling him a cult leader was like persecuting Jesus. Moon claims to have found the perfect Eve in a 17-year-old girl he married in 1960, Han Hokja. He told the cult that her preparation to be his bride to receive Moon began at the age of 4. Oof. In 1947, she was blessed by Mrs. Ho. Being so young at the time, she did not remember the experience, but Moon was aware of it from the moment he met her. Once the vows of matrimony were exchanged, Moon, as the perfect Adam, could not let himself fall into the same trap as the first Adam. He snatched her out of the satanic world and taught her to obey. Since Adam fell by being dominated by Eve, he had to reverse the precedent by achieving complete domination over his wife. Obedience training went from formative to growth and protection. He stashed Hokjan Han away in a rented room, kept her in bitter poverty, and forbid her from seeing her family. Moon claimed that their union marked the beginning of the completed Testament era, in which Moon would reverse the fall of man by making his wife pay penance for Eve's sin. Mrs. Moon actually said that she would sacrifice her life if he had so ordered after all of this. So that was the beginning of their marriage and life together. Moon and his wife became the true parents known as father and mother. For Moon, men and women are divine creations. But to fully recognize God's greatness, Adam and Eve were the first. Reverend Moon claims his church is part of Christianity, but because Jesus fell, the teachings of the divine principle supersede the authority of the Bible. In 1971, Moon declared, by killing one man, Jesus, the Jewish people had to suffer for 2,000 years. Countless numbers of people have been slaughtered. During World War II, 6 million people were slaughtered to cleanse all of the sins of the Jewish people from the time of Jesus. The divine principle therefore teaches family unity as dictated by Moon. When Jesus grew up, he felt as a leader because he was unable to love his disciples enough to motivate them to kill for him or die in his place. Moonies are taught that because Moon's love is not of the weak, Jesus kind, their love for Moon must be strong enough to do what Jesus' disciples were unprepared to do. Since Jesus was incapable of perfect love, owing to his unwholesomeness upbringing, he was also unable to marry as God intended. Only true parents can consecrate the heavenly marriage needed to create the heavenly home. Before Moon grants permission for Unification members to marry, they must serve him for at least 3 years, corresponding to Jesus' ministry of 3 years. Mates are chosen by Moon, often at random, in a large group. In the church's view, Jesus had failed in his mission to purify mankind because he was crucified before being able to marry and have children. Mr. Moon saw himself as completing the unfulfilled task of Jesus to restore humankind to a state of perfection by producing sinless children and by blessing couples who would produce them. Marriage was a key part of achieving salvation, and for a couple, the marriage was as much of a commitment to the church as it was to each other. Moon told his followers that they could join his sin-free bloodline by marrying a spouse of his choosing and engaging in a series of rituals. First, the newlywoods would beat each other with a bat, and then they would perform a 3-day sex ceremony involving prescribed positions in front of Moon's portrait. And after the final sexual interlude in missionary position, the bride would bow down to the groom, a confirmation that they had restored the lost ideal of goodness. Theoretically, to become engaged in the Unification Church, one must have been a member for 3 years, one must have recruited 3 new members, and one must have made the required financial contributions to the indemnity fund. This payment symbolizes unification teachings that all humanity shares in the debt owed for the betrayal of Jesus, and that we all must pay for his collective sin. The Unification Church teaches that wives are subservient to their husbands, just as children are subservient to their parents. They must obey. If you beat your children from temper, it is a sin, the Reverend Moon has said. But if they do not obey you, you can bring them by force. It will be good for them. After all, if they do not obey you, you can even strike them. The Unification Church teaches that wives are subservient to their husbands, just as children are subservient to their parents. They must obey. Your wives who have been slapped or hit by your husband, raise your hands, he once instructed at a Sunday sermon in Belvedere. Sometimes you may be struck because of your lips. Now we have a little bit on babies after they're born. 8 days after a baby's birth in the Unification Church, a ceremony of dedication is performed. The number 8 signifies a new beginning in Unification numerology. The ceremony is not a baptism. The dedication is more of a prayer service to thank God for the birth of the new child. That's what their ceremony is for when a new baby is born. It is said that the Moons didn't really believe in rearing their children, nor did they think anybody else should, because Mr. Moon always came first. The true mother and true father did. And they assigned a church sister or a nanny or a nursemaid to their children, and the Reverend Moon explained it as such. The Messiah came first. He expected believers to dedicate themselves to public proselytizing on his behalf. The pursuit of personal family happiness was a self-indulgence. The Reverend Moon even designated particular couples among his original disciples to assume responsibility for the moral and spiritual development of each one of the Moon children. Assuming those parental duties himself, the Reverend Moon argued, would distract him from his larger mission, the conversion of the world to unificationism. The Reverend Moon also taught that Korean is the universal language of the Kingdom of Heaven. He has written that English is spoken only in the colonies of the Kingdom of Heaven. When the Unification Church movement becomes more advanced, the international official languages of the Unification Church shall be Korean. The official conferences will be conducted in Korean, similar to Catholic conferences, which are conducted in Latin. Moon also teaches that everyone's ancestors are in hell, and followers must pay to liberate each generation. The official website for the Unification Church's South Korean headquarters, known as Cheonwon, even has an ancestors liberation calculator with varying prices depending on a country. To liberate all 430 generations of one family, paternal and maternal, requires $12,420 in Norway or the US, but just $2,280 in Sudan. In Japan, the same test requires $44,000 US. There are additional fees for blessing ancestors, liberating the souls of babies lost through miscarriage or abortion, and even the chance to pre-liberate one's own soul before death, but only for those whose ancestors have already been saved. Moon's church thrived under the military dictatorship of South Korean's General Park Chung-hee. Park extended various forms of official support, sending senior civil servants and military officers to the Unification's leadership seminars. Moon embarked on world tours over the next decade, and in 1972 settled in the United States with his wife, 8 children, and a staff of 35 Moonies in a 25-room mansion overlooking the Hudson River in Irvington, New York. I came to America primarily to declare the new age and new truth. Moon. Moon was usually introduced by Unification President Neil Salonen, who tells audiences that this country is going to hell because of crime, suicide, alcoholism, divorce, sex, drug abuse, college radicals, and communists. Neil Salonen says God sent Moon to the United States to solve these problems and to, quote, mobilize an ideological army of young people to unite the world in a new age of faith. In 1976, Moon tells his audience of the approaching apocalypse and offers them one last chance for salvation. Quote, you can be citizens of the kingdom of heaven
if you meet the coming Messiah. He is your hope and the only hope of America and of this world. I don't need new tires, but stay tuned for the next episode.
If you're one of our haters who are out there watching,
I want to warn people about hypnoporn.
We need to stay meta.
Stop that.
Need new tires? Like, what?
if Jim would shut up for a second.
Oh, high fidelity.
Okay, don't tell me to shut up.
I'm not whining.
I eat doggies. I eat dogs. Feels like a party.
Stop that.
It's a war. They have made it so that I cannot be celebrating July 4th.
I don't care. I'm gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend. I don't care. How do I think? That's what I think. I don't care.
We're going to have to be smart. We're going to have to be strategic. We're going to have to be aggressive.
I'm an alpha guy.
I'll flip a table every time you aren't getting by.
Let's go. Just push.
It's all psychological warfare.
I'm not part of QAnon.
We know what they are doing.
For Trump.
If shit goes wrong, like, I will literally have to leave the country. Stop that.
I'll land my initial plane. Okay, high five. This isn't the hi-fi show.
Good night. Nighty night.